Hello Cave Dwellers, welcome to the Cave. It's a show and tell and I'm joined today by Retro Ravi, Ravi Abbott, 8-Bit Mix, the Retro Hour Ravi. You've got so many names, Ravi.
Just Retro Ravi.
Just Retro Ravi.
Yeah.
You probably know him. He appears all over the place with his retro goodness.
Like a virus.
Like a virus, indeed. And next to me, the man who's normally behind the camera, because it is in fact my stunt double, it's Dan from Retro Recollections. That's not true. He's got his own YouTube channel, and links to both of these guys' channels are down below in the descriptions, so do check them out. Now, today we are talking all about this gorgeous machine on the table here. It's an Amiga 4000. It belongs to Ravi. It's a very special version, as you can probably spot immediately by the decals on the front of it. And we're going to make you instant experts before we chat about it with a very special Dan and Ravi fact attack.
The A4000 is the follow-up to the A3000. There are two models, the A4000-040, released in 1992, and the 030, released in 93, which housed the Motorola 68040 and the 68EC030 respectively. The EC indicates the memory management and floating point units of the full fat version have been removed to save on costs. The A4000 was the first Amiga to ship with AGA, which offered 24-bit colour and new display modes, as well as increased sprite capacity and overall performance.
It was released in a desktop form factor, but a tower version, the A4000T, would later be released. Off the shelf, the machine came with 2 MB of chip RAM in the form of 32-bit SIM modules. The A4000 does not have a CPU fitted to the motherboard. Instead, it's mounted in an expansion board which can be easily swapped out for an upgradable model, although a later CR or cost-reduced version of the system would see the CPU surface mounted to the system board.
Ports on the back are reduced when compared to the A3000. Gone are the external SCSI and 31 kHz monitor connector. You now plug your monitor in with a 15-pin adapter. It does add a Euro power out connector though to pass through and power your monitor. Although this isn't present on Ravi's machine, as he's replaced the PSU. Internally, our A4000 has 4 32-bit Zorro 3 expansion slots into which you can install graphics, audio, network, SCSI cards, or the famous NewTek video toaster, the name of which is branded on Ravi's Amiga.
The Amiga was built from day one to offer IBM PC compatibility with a range of bridge boards, and the 4000 was no different. With a 286, 386 or 486 board, you can do regular PC expansion, and later in life expansion boards supporting PCI cards would be released. The A4000 was discontinued in 1994.
So now I hope you're experts on the machine, thanks to that fact attack. Guys, welcome and thank you for joining me today. Let's talk about this A4000 then. Let's talk about it in general before we get down to your specific A4000. And Ravi's got on the desk there the very edition of Amiga format in which it was reviewed. And we'll talk about that a bit as well, because the review's a bit inaccurate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's promising a lot of things that weren't actually in the 4000, and as usual, Commodore kind of cheaped out on this one.
Yeah, and it talks about things like the AA chipset, which would go on to be renamed the AGA chipset.
And also having a flicker fixer, which it didn't have. The Amiga 3000 had a flicker fixer, which was a great option because you could use modern monitors on it and stuff, but sadly they left that out.
We'll come on to the specifics of what's in there. Let's start with price. Dan, how much did this thing set us back?
It would set you back at the time for £2,100, including tax.
Yeah, and it sounds pricey, but just 2 years prior, the Amiga 3000 was £3,000 on launch, and they got a lot of stick for that. It was too expensive in many's minds.
It was, but it was also a kind of like a Mac Pro or like an industry machine. That's how I kind of saw these, where the lower end Amigas were a lot cheaper. These ones were used for video editing and stuff, so kind of a lot of people like educational places would buy them.
Right, yeah. And it was released at a time when the Amiga was selling well. It was 1992 at this point, so it was doing well, but there were concerns bubbling up that Commodore weren't doing the research and weren't preparing for the next generation. So this was to try and address those fears. So they were really looking with that £2,100 price tag to find that balance between performance and price, I think. Did they nail it?
They cheaped out on a few things. The 3000 was more expensive, but it had a flicker fixer. It was a nicer machine, but this was still quite a good powerhouse. A little bit pricey though.
A little bit pricey. You still think it was overpriced. Did we all have Amigas here, by the way? You obviously did. I had an Amiga 500 before I abandoned ship and went to the PC. Dan?
I had an Amiga 600.
Any upgrades or just basic?
Just a basic one with a few peripherals.
Yeah.
Things like for desktop publishing, and so I did a bit of sound sampling.
Okay, so we've all got experience with the Amiga. We can all put its performance in some kind of context compared to what we had. So spec-wise, I'm going to go through the names of some new chips because this was the first machine with the AGA chipset. The Super Gary is named in Amiga format, but I'm not so sure it's in there. I think it's just there was a Gary and I think there was a Fat Gary.
Yeah, and there was a Fat Agnes as well.
Okay, yeah. So I think Super Gary, unless you know better, leave a comment if you do. We don't think that made an appearance. There's the Ramsey, which straight out of the kitchen. The Ramsey is the RAM controller.
Which is quite good actually, because this can hold 16 meg of RAM.
Okay.
Which is quite a lot for an
It can
Amiga.
hold more than that, in fact, because you've got the Zorro 3 slots, and each of those...
You can expand off those as
Each
well,
of those
yeah.
can have 64 meg, so you could, if money is no object, you could really load that out with a lot of RAM. Now, the Super Amber is mentioned in the Amiga format, and this is a review, by the way, this isn't a preview. So you would expect it to be a bit more accurate, but the Super Amber was present in the A3000. It's a flicker fixer, by the way. It was present in the A2320, which was the add-on flicker fixer for the 2000, but it didn't make it into the final product.
Yeah, so on the 3000 you used to have a little output, and on the back it would be like a VGA output, and you'd have a switch where you could toggle on and off the flicker fixer. Here, you've just got your Amiga video out.
And it comes with an adapter, doesn't it? So
so you can use it with monitors, but that really doesn't do much.
Yeah. Dan, what were you using? Were you using the RF out on your 600, or did you have a proper monitor?
I was using the RF out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I was too. And looking back, I don't know how I went so many years using the RF out on my A500.
Without going blind.
Without going blind. It's incredible, but we did it. The Lisa and the Alice are also mentioned, and they are included in there because they're part of the final AGA chipset, so they were also in the Amiga 1200. So they made it. Lisa manages the hardware sprites and other graphical tasks, and Alice replaces Agnes doing the chip RAM and DMA channel duties. So new chips making an appearance in a new machine. Was it new enough in 1992? Would you have liked to have seen more?
To be honest, I thought it was a very capable machine, and one thing was the video mode. So being able to do hold and modify video, which enabled stuff like the video toaster, professional video editing on there. So combined
you had ham modes from the 1000 upwards in the old one. So were these improved?
Yes, and with the video cards that you could get into there, they took advantage of it, but it was only the NTSC card. So they never were able to release a video toaster, which was this extra graphics card for PAL.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's only NTSC, but they had a thing called a time-based corrector where you could correct the time code on it and split half the quality down. So it wasn't broadcast quality. If you used a time-based corrector, it would basically squash the image a bit and make it work on PAL, but not to the high broadcast quality that you could have with the NTSC models.
Now let's talk about some of the weaker points of it. I know this is your machine and you love it, but I think even you'll admit it has some weaknesses. The first being that it still has the original Paula sound chip, which goes back to the original A1000 in 1985. 1992, it would have been competing with the likes of Sound Blaster cards, 16-bit sound cards, so a bit of a weakness.
It was definitely, and the way that people tried to get around that was kind of using the CPU, so they'd slow down the modules and add a few more channels onto it, and doing lots of kind of fake modes, but not really. That high quality
Squeezing
sound.
absolutely everything out of that Paula chip. You were into your music on your 600, weren't you? You had a Techno Sound Turbo or something.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact name, but it might have been that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just did a little bit of sampling, like you did with your tape deck, and
Yeah.
attaching it through the
So
audio.
if you think the 600 is pretty much the same sound as this,
Yeah,
even though
exactly the
they're
same.
such different models,
But you have had that modified slightly, haven't you? As we'll see when we look at the
Yeah, that's just an audio mixer, so the CD audio mixers with the Amiga sound.
Right. Okay. So that's what that is. It's a stunning looking modification. We'll show you inside.
It's been around for years. That one, yeah.
There's a lot of hot glue inside this thing, as you'll see when we open it up. It didn't come with a CD-ROM originally, but it was promised from the off that a CD-ROM would be coming for it. I don't know what speed that would have been, single, double speed. It wouldn't have been the, what have you got, 40 speed. It's in there. And then the other weakness, and this is one that people always bring up about the 4000. In the Amiga 3000, you had SCSI hard drives.
Yeah.
In the 4000, it was gone. Was all SCSI capability taken out of it? I think
No,
it was.
because there were some cards that you could put in.
Right, so there were add-on
Zorro cards and mess about with SCSI and kind of try to recreate it. But,
So out of the box, you had an IDE hard drive, which, okay, I used one at the time on my PC. It was fine. But if I was using it for video toaster duties and dealing with quite large files, that might have been a bottleneck.
And also, it only had one output, the IDE. So you had to get a kind of converter and splitter to convert into 4 different outputs. So when I wanted to add the CD-ROM drive on, I had to get another way of splitting from that IDE so that the CD drive was on it. And it became a nightmare with kind of having lots of stuff connected to the IDE, having to, work out what's the slave, what's the master, all of this old school fun,
It's all so easy now, isn't it?
Yeah, when it all auto detects.
Yeah. So 1992 is when it came out. It was up against some tough competition. What did we all have in 1992?
I had this.
You had this all the way back then. This isn't a
Yeah.
acquisition.
This is like my dad's machine. He used to have it upstairs in the attic, and I used to. First, it was 2000, and then we got this, and I used to go up and play Lemmings on this.
Oh, that must have blown your mind back then. Yeah, Dan, what did you have in 92?
If I didn't have my 600, I'm not sure if that was out yet, was it? I would have still had my Commodore 16.
Commodore 16,
Oh,
wow, that was a big jump. From a
rocking
Commodore 16 to a 600. Wow, what came after the 600 for you?
And then it would be the PC, probably in late 90s.
Yeah.
Pentium.
With a Pentium MMX.
92, I would have been transitioning then from my A500 to a 486 PC, 486 SX33, a Packard Bell Special. And I made that leap having seen the Amiga 1200, having seen the Amiga 600 and thinking, this isn't enough, Commodore. This isn't a big enough jump. This isn't going to end well. But the 4000 would have been completely off my radar. I wouldn't have had the money to pay for that.
I didn't know of the smaller Amigas. I thought this was Amiga, and that was it. It was big boxes.
Yeah.
And I saw one of these little ones. I was like, well, what's this toy?
Yeah. So the 4000 would have been about double the price of what I paid for my 486 PC. Amiga format there, you've got Pat McDonald, who did the review there. Hello, Pat, if you're watching. I doubt he is. Pat McDonald likens the performance to a 486DX. That's the Amiga 4000 040 CPU.
Okay.
Would you say there's any truth in that? Does it match up to a DX?
Pretty much, because the thing about the Amiga operating system was it was so fast. And even though on paper the specs will seem different in like megahertz or whatever, the usage and the kind of nippiness and the speed of it, I'd say it seemed very comparative, especially when you were doing rendering as well and stuff like that.
Well, the 486DX had the maths coprocessor built in. I think the DX would have had the advantage, but you have the hands-on experience.
I think bare bones it wouldn't have, but when people bought these initially, they'd have like a Picasso card in there that would be quite fast, do video switching. They'd also not have the 040 CPU. There'd be lots of different CPUs that came out as well. So some of them had FPUs.
Yeah. And Commodore, when they made this, they were expected really to make it so that it would be compatible with existing software.
A lot of the problem was people were trying to run ECS software on there, and then they were sort of struggling. Oh, we can't play the Amiga stuff. This is incompatible. We can't have the old stuff. And then there was this disc called Reload Kick, which you just put in, and it had the 500 Kickstarter image on it.
Right.
And that would then boot you into that white screen, and you'd basically be able to run 500
Right.
software
So those were
straight away.
incompatibilities caused by the newer kickstarts.
Yeah.
Positioning themselves in slightly different memory positions, and then the programs that were hard-coded to look for those positions clashing with it.
And a lot of people would have their old stuff saved in ECS, so, and then they'd come onto the system, it's not working.
Do you think the fact that it tried and had to be compatible with the older software held it back? Would you have liked to have seen Commodore just shed all of the old Amiga stuff and go, right, this is the new platform, this is the new
Because I
baseline?
don't think there'd be enough for them to survive. Like, there was a lot of legacy with the older software that they kind of then continued to the new versions. And yeah, I think the old compatibility was the charm of it, being able to put your old 500 disc in there with this reload kit and play that.
Yeah.
We saw something similar to that with the Atari Falcon, because that wasn't compatible with the ST, was it?
Oh.
Yeah. So the Atari brought out this all singing, all dancing new machine. I can't remember what CPU was in the Falcon. Might have been an 040, might have
It
been
was,
an
but
030.
it handled video a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, it was a good machine. It was a good
Beautiful,
machine.
yeah.
It failed. Was it because of that? Don't know. Atari was pretty late in its life by then anyway. So let's talk about your machine specifically, Ravi. Where did you get it from?
So I got this from Nottingham Trent University. I am ex-alumni. My dad used to work there, and he ran the, it was called Trent Polytechnic back then, and he ran the fine art department. So him and an artist decided to basically buy Amigas for the whole place, because they saw these were cheaper machines, they were good for video editing, good for animation. So we used to go in and there'd be a room of 8 of them, and they'd have SVHS video editing decks. There'd be people rendering over weeks and stuff. And then I got this one, but this one was actually in my parents' house. So this is like my dad's own one, and you can actually see on the bottom, I think I have Visual and Performing Arts from Nottingham Trent University. So the keyboard's from those guys.
Please don't check your asset registers if you're watching.
And then I was a big fan of the video toaster, so I bought these externally from America and branded the machine with these.
So this wasn't a video toaster machine originally, because if it was, it would have been an NTSC machine, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
but there's also ways of switching between PAL and NTSC inside this machine with jumpers as well. So you can kind of get it going, but everything has to be NTSC. So
Right.
like your video output and all of this, it's a bit of a nightmare. Steve Jones was trying to help me with it, but I ended up giving up and just keeping the video toaster
Keeping the
branding.
branding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's ownership like of one of these? What are some of the common problems that you might have to deal with?
As with every Amiga, the battery
Right.
is the problem. You always need to snip it out. I've lost 2 of these because I did not know about the battery back in the days.
Right.
And then returned to them and saw an awful sight.
Because it had the classic Varta barrel battery, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then there was a later cost-reduced version, which it did a few things. For example, it took the CPU card and they put the CPU on the board itself. But one good thing they did do with it, they changed it to a coin cell, a CR battery.
Yeah.
So if you've got a cost-reduced version, it's likely to last longer if you haven't snipped it out.
And also I've got it all recapped.
Yeah.
The daughter board's been recapped as well, which everyone seems to forget about when they recap it as well. And I've done a power conversion, because the old power supplies are also notorious for killing boards. So,
And I know you also want me to do a little bit of work on it today.
oh yeah, I can't come here without.
I don't normally do outside repairs, but it's an Amiga, it's a Ravi. Is that good with you?
Yeah,
Let's do it. So what was it that Ravi needed me to do? First up, it's the original RAM sockets. The clips on them have failed or broken, so the RAM doesn't stay in place, and you can see hot glue here has been used to hold them down. It works, but it's pretty crude and we should do something about that. Over here, the DB9 port for the mouse or joystick is very loose, as it's snapped on both sides, so I'll swap that out with a new one, and hopefully he can use his mouse again. First up then is to remove the existing SIM sockets. That's 72 legs per socket, 360 legs to be desoldered, and thank goodness for the desoldering gun to make short work of it. As usual, all the tools that I use can be found in the RMC tool shop in the video description. The sockets were pretty well behaved on removal, with the occasional stubborn leg remaining in the board. You can see one here. To ease them out, I just add some fresh solder and then desolder it again, hoping that the fresh solder will get the old stuff flowing again and up the barrel of the vacuum gun. And sure enough, that's just what happened here. With all those sockets removed, I used IPA to make sure all of the flux paste was removed from the board, and then lined up the new sockets to solder in. This definitely seems like a higher quality socket with more industrial looking clips than the original. I think they'll be more than up to the task, and they look pretty smart in white too. So let the soldering of 360 legs commence. With that done, thanks to several cups of tea made by Ravi as I worked on this, the RAM goes back into place. The rightmost on your picture here is the 2MB of chip RAM, and the rest amounts to 16MB of fast RAM. That's a fully loaded Amiga 4000. Finally, the DB9 port was a quick swap out without any drama to report, and then there was a knock at the door and James from Let's Talk Retro showed up and caught Ravi putting everything back in the case. James is a big Amiga fan himself and was as excited as the rest of us to get up close with an A4000. We'll get to see the machine and its 040 processor in action shortly, but first let's see if Ravi's happy with the work we've done. So Ravi, are you happy with the repairs?
I'm well happy. This is awesome. Yeah, it feels like a new machine. I've got my mouse port working. We checked the RAM in Workbench and it was all showing. Yep. So absolutely excellent. Now I just need to put hard drive in there and
so you've got your compact flash adapter, but you haven't actually put a compact flash card in there.
No. So.
But you have to. Is that a new upgrade?
Yeah.
Okay, so you just haven't finished setting
it would have been IDE cards back in the days, like IDE. Hard drives, yeah.
ID hard drives or a SCSI Zorro card, if you wanted a SCSI drive. Speaking of modern upgrades, I did notice you were installing something else in there which looked very swish.
So this is the ZZ9000 and it's a new card that's just come out, and basically for years people with Amigas used to have all these tiny adapters, so they'd have like an Ethernet adapter or they'd also have,
flicker fixer,
all of that stuff. This card does it all in one, so on the back here, we've got a HDMI port.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Ethernet, USB, got a gig of RAM on there, but it's also got a ARM CPU.
Right, and what does that act as, a secondary processor? Or?
Well, there's new applications that are being made, so you can actually take advantage of the ARM CPU as a secondary processor, and it takes the load off video work, of rendering, stuff like that. So there's loads of potential. So imagine if you had a Vampire in here and you had the ARM processor on top of there. It would be some crazy speeds.
Well, there's so much that you can do with this in its original form as well as with that incredible upgrade that Ravi's put in there. So to see us out, Ravi's going to show us a montage of things that have been captured directly from this machine in its present configuration. Guys, thank you very much for joining me today. They made a big old journey to get down here today, so I appreciate it, and we're going to go and celebrate with a few beers now. Dan, thank you. Ravi, thank you. Check out their channels. links in the description. And also James from Let's Talk Retro, who's on the other side of the room, who's popped in to say hello. Check them all out. I don't know why he's waving, he's not on camera.
Check out the Retro Gamer Show.
Thank you.
And take care, everyone. See you soon.